welcome to Akron Community Voice. My name is Kat McDaniel, and we're here today with another collaboration from NAACP Akron Power and Community Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Lathardus Goggins II and Judi Hill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome to our Power and Community Podcast, a podcast that focuses on important issues and topics that affect our community here in the Akron, Ohio area. We believe that knowledge is power, and organized power makes change happen. I'm Judi Hill, president of the Akron branch NAACP.
And I'm Dr. Lathardus Goggins II, the second vice president and education chair for the NAACP Akron.
We will be discussing educational issues today, and with us, we are proud to say we have Dr. Christina Collins, executive director of Honesty for Education.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, how you doing? And so today's episode, we'll be talking about education and the importance of education. And in particular, the National NAACP, one of its major pillars of its advocacy is education. And we in the NAACP, we advocate for equitable local and state and federal policies that establish education standards and allocate resources that set priorities for a high-quality education and workforce systems. As you know, there has been this ongoing attack, but most recently kind of stepped up. And again, the National NAACP, which we are all a part of, we have a focus, what we call Hour 25. And as a part of that, we are seeking to defend public education, protect public funding of education, to protect the DEI initiatives, and we can get into what some of the specifics of that is, and we've had that conversation, and then also to protect even the idea of a high quality public education that advocates for academic achievement, best practices. Right, so that's some of our local initiatives, and that's coming from the national. And one of the things that we have done is partner with Honesty for Ohio Education. And so, if you just don't mind, just give us a little brief about the mission of Honesty and some of the ways in which. Because Honesty is a collaboration. Just give us some information about that, please.
Sure. So our mission is ensuring that all children in the state of Ohio have access to honest and inclusive education in welcoming and supportive learning environments. And we do that work, as you mentioned, we work in coalition. We have a coalition of 76 current partners across the state of Ohio. A lot of them are statewide organizations. We have various regions of the NAACP, including Ohio's NAACP. But we also have LGBTQ groups, we have faith-based groups, we have the teachers unions, we have the ACLU. So we work in partnership with a lot of big groups in Ohio. And a lot of our work, we've done things at the State House. We teach people how to testify, how to engage at the state level. But in the last year and a half, we've really focused on teaching people how to engage at the local level with their local school boards. So we work with community groups, grassroots groups. I think the Freedom Block is a group out here in Akron that we've worked with to really get people to understand how they can engage in what's going on in their public education system.
Yes.
And the National NAACP has always had a focus. Actually, that's really where we got our footing. Especially Brown versus Board of Education. So it's always about equity and leveling the playing field. Please tell us one of the other initiatives that Honesty for Education has been working on. I know, Dr. Goggins, you mentioned an event that you went to yesterday about engaging community members, not just on local levels, but also statewide.
So a great example, and I don't know how far we want to go into the DEI conversation right now, but DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's really under attack nationally and at the state level. Probably the catalyst moment for this was February 14th when a letter came from the Federal Department of Education that basically redefined what diversity, equity, and inclusion meant, as well as what discrimination meant in schools. And so we pretty quickly engaged, and one of the ways that we did that was we released statements of guidance for 2 levels. We went with community members and parents, and we said, here's what you should be pushing your schools to do. And then we also did administrators and boards. Here is what you should and should not be doing in response to this letter. So we've continued to engage in that. Again, I don't know how much we want to go into that yet, but we've continued to engage in that initiative. There have been state bills that have been introduced just since February 14th that we are also trying to engage in. So this is at all of the levels of government that we are working on this initiative.
Yes, yes. And so one of the things that I remember or getting involved with, honestly, and building this relationship was really impressive for me, that as an advocate, all too often, by the time I heard about something, it was, did you hear what they did?
Yeah.
And you was always in this state of responding to something that already happened. Honesty has built this coalition and advocacy so that you can actually get involved while things were happening, while the decisions were being made, and impact that. I know we talk about this where we are now with this anti-DEI and the law that passed, but that law got started almost 5 years ago. If I remember, House Bill 322, which turned to House Bill 327, and it was 616 at some point, and then it was Senate Bill 1 and Senate Bill 83, and all these kind of different things. Yeah. And over the years, because of the advocacy and the coalition, and being able to get information out, we were able to show up at the State House. We were able to engage and push that back to, unfortunately, now, but it was still a fight, right? And it made a difference. Yeah. So just speak, because part of what this is not only to bring awareness, but to provide some resources and strategies about how can we engage and make a difference.
So first, I want to say go to honestyforohioeducation.org because we have been pushing out tons and tons of resources. And what we've kind of refocused on is making sure that we're providing things like board resolutions. So any community member could take a board resolution to their school board and say, I want you to work on passing this. But we also have a school board alliance that we work with, which is equity-minded school board members, currently sitting school board members across Ohio, that we also push resolutions to, and we say, hey, consider passing this with your board. So we're trying to work on all fronts, but what we have found is when we can put the thing in people's hands and give them a thing to take and do, or when we give them specific talking points, vouchers is a big issue. And when we say, here are 6 talking points that you can take to your school board and talk about them, we have to make it as simple as possible, because I think, in a lot of ways, a lot of these issues have gotten so complicated. I mean, when we talk about school funding, and we're talking about property taxes and what percentages and the caps and all these things, people do not understand that.
And we're being overloaded with information about this bill. Oh, it's not that bill anymore. It's called something else. Yeah. And now do this. Yeah. And they're throwing so many initiatives at us at once. Yeah. It's important that people get nuggets of information and say, this is what you can do. So thank you for that work.
Absolutely. The very repeatable, short talking points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so, and we've been kind of talking about some different things, so let's be very specific for just a moment. So when we think about at the national, state, local level, we know about the anti-DEI push. So let's spend some time there. You mentioned school funding, so let's talk a little bit about that. And whatever else that you see that is kind of in the milieu, in the air at the national, that you see focusing on the state, that's coming to the state and where we might need to move nationally. So first, the DEI, the anti-DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What are some of the key pushbacks, and why would we need to defend it?
Well, the number one key pushback is in the acronym itself. It's what part of that do you not agree with? Do you not agree that diversity matters and that we are a diverse population? Do you not agree that equity is providing everybody what they need to be successful? It's not just race-based, it's ability, it's gender, it's all of the things. So what about providing people the supports they need to be successful do you not like? And then the last one, what do you not like about inclusion? So those are some of the easiest ways to push back on that language. But for me, my background is in education. I was a teacher. I was a curriculum director. To me, that is just good teaching. That is what good teaching is. It's recognizing every student has a diverse background, they have diverse needs, and everyone should be able to be educated in a welcoming learning environment. That's good teaching. That's what all the research tells us.
So the pushback really is, do you really want all of our kids to know all the information or have access to it?
Exactly.
Because that's the key of what we're seeing.
Right.
If you look at the Project 2025, their whole goal was to push back on DEI in the federal government.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about education. They didn't talk about these, but they said in the federal government.
Yeah.
This administration, I think, has taken it a little further, and they're looking at ways to dismantle some civil rights issues, rights for others, based on their quote-unquote DEI and being woke. And I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with being awake.
Right.
So that resulted in the dismantle. Well, they have, it's not officially dismantled, but definitely the understaffing and the under-resourced, pulling resources away from the Department of Education.
Nationally.
And because one of the major roles of the Department of Education was to monitor that inclusion and equitable aspect of the resources that students would need, those who have been identified with special ed or the individual learning plans, those kinds of things, civil rights concerns and issues were all went through the Department of Education. And what I found also crazy is the statistics, right? National statistics about effectiveness, what programs are effective, what would be effective programs, monitoring outcomes. All that was done through the Department of Education, and that's been pulled back.
But not enforcement. Am I correct on that? Enforcement of those rules, those laws, those national initiatives was a state focus. Is that correct?
In some ways.
Okay.
So when civil rights were violated, there was a federal office to which people could go, but that has been cut so drastically. At this moment, if somebody felt like their civil rights were violated in education, it would be incredibly hard for them to get the support that they need to be able to enforce their right to education.
Right.
Now.
Wow.
That's that. All right, so that's that. So and we see that now. Well, not just now, but as we talked about, that has been also a move in the state level. So in Ohio, there's been this anti-DEI, don't talk about it kind of movement as well, right?
Yes. Senate Bill 1, which has unfortunately already passed, that was Senate Bill 83 that you were talking about earlier, that we were able to hold off for a couple of years. So Senate Bill 1 passed very quickly this year, and that's the higher education anti-DEI bill. But we have Senate Bill 113 and House Bill 155. Those are the anti-DEI bills in K-12 education. Yeah, and consistently across all of this, what's important is there is no attempt to define what DEI, what diversity, equity, and inclusion actually means.
There
in any of
is
this.
no national definition.
No.
But
no.
we're trying to destroy it, but
Right.
we don't know what we're destroying.
Right.
But I just pointed out, but they can't define it because how are you going to say we don't believe in diverse perspectives? Even though they talk about intellectual diversity, but intellectual diversity still means diversity and different perspectives.
Right.
And then there's Okay, what part of the individual student getting the individual instruction that's needed for their success, right?
Yeah.
That's equity, right? Individual learning plans, differentiated learning, differentiated teaching and lessons. That's a standard practice of a good teacher, right?
Yeah.
And then what you going to say? We're all American except for...
And that's why they don't want to define it. Think about that.
Right.
Think about what you just said. If you define it, then you have to go by those definitions, right? So they're not going to define it. They want us to keep defining and having these conversations so that we can help them refine what they want to do.
Well, you get into this pre-compliance, and that's a whole nother discussion. That the bully makes the bombast and sees, because if you're thinking and know your stuff, you know, as all the different analysis have said, this is not policy. This is not law.
It is not law.
Right? But those who are who are unsure of themselves, those who are not committed, and those who just run fearful will respond to the roaring lion and freeze and lose their stuff. And even though, as it's been showing, the courts have identified this is not constitutional, but the damage is already done by those who were so afraid that they tried to pre-comply and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and we can spend a lot of time. We want to spend some time talking about school funding now,
and before you get to school funding, I just want to say one of the conversations you and I had, and we don't have to name schools, but there are districts who said we're not going to listen to or pay attention to this rhetoric until it's a law.
Right.
And I applaud them. I applaud them wholeheartedly because it's important that your community knows where you stand and who you stand for.
100%.
And
Sorry.
we should
No.
And we should remember, talking about school board folks, remember those board members that chose to be fearful, or those who chose to have courage and stand on the democratic principles, right? We should remember that. Particularly here in Akron, we have 4 coming up in November. But there's also school funding, right? That's kind of coming with this. Now, it's been a while that we talk about school choice and those kinds of things, but this has really manifested in Ohio particularly. Can you share just a little bit on that?
Very quickly, we are seeing cuts at the federal level. They are right now talking about their budget and wanting to cut from public education and give more money to private education. That's the same conversation that we're seeing in Ohio. The House's version of the budget. So we're in a budget process right now in the state, and the budget will be done at the end of June. And right now we are fighting for our public schools to get the money that is owed to them. Our House has submitted its version of the budget. It goes to the Senate. The Senate gets to consider and give their version of the budget. They come back together. They reconcile that, come up with a final budget. It goes to the governor. The House's version of the budget gives almost twice as much money to private school students than it does to the 90% of students in Ohio that are in our public schools.
90% of...
Say that one more time.
Yes. 90% of the students in Ohio are in public schools in Ohio. And again, double the money would be going, under the House's version of the budget, double the money would be going to private school education.
So 10% will get twice as much money as 90%.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
It's scary to even digest what you just said. Along with that, they're talking about changing the way that schools have to pay for private school transportation. That's a part of the bill.
Wow. So much. All right. So we want to end with solutions, and we want to talk about some things resources. So once again, where can someone who is moved want to learn more about what the legislations, pieces of legislation, laws and stuff bills that are being passed, and what are some things we can do to organize and connect?
Okay, there are 3 very specific asks right now for everyone. And again, all this on honestyforohioeducation.org under our school funding tab. There's also another group, All In for Ohio Kids. They have a fabulous toolkit with lots of additional steps that people can take. But really, there are 3 essential asks. One is if your local school board has not approved a resolution in support of the Fair School Funding Plan. I know this is like a little in the weeds, but again, just surface level. Get your school board to sign the resolution saying they want the state to fund the schools based on the Fair School Funding Plan. That's number 1. Number 2 is a separate resolution to join the Vouchers Hurt Ohio lawsuit. There's about 200 districts in Ohio that have joined this lawsuit. The lawsuit is to stop the amount of the money that is just flowing to private schools. That's essentially what it is to do. So we need more schools to join that lawsuit. It is $2 a student, so there is a cost, but it's less than the cost of the amount of money that we're losing to vouchers every year. And then the third thing right now is we need people to be contacting their senators. And I know that's hard and people don't like to do it. We're not necessarily asking people to go and testify, but we're asking people to call. You call in the evening when they're not in the office and leave them a voicemail, like get the call out. But we do have some talking points and some messaging. But essentially it comes down to tell them, fund the Fair School Funding Plan, prioritize the students in our public schools, and stop letting money just flow to private education. Support our public school students. Again, 90% of our children are in public schools. Support our public. They are not the worst choice option, and they're being treated like the worst of all the choice options.
Well, we here in Akron particularly know that charter does not necessarily mean better, and that in many cases, you can find good opportunities in teaching and educative experiences within the public school systems, for sure. So again, where can we go to get some more information?
So honestyforohioeducation.org.
Okay. And also on the NAACP Akron website. So that's naacpakron.org. Website, go to the education tab, and we'll have resources there as well. So let me ask this. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm looking at you. So let's end with who do you remember in your education history? Your favorite teacher, that teacher that made a difference in your life. Let's end on something positive.
Who do I remember? I had an African American studies teacher, Mrs. Lockley. May she rest in peace.
Yes, I remember her. Yeah.
And mine was an art teacher who was not my teacher, but was a dear friend and a great mentor who made sure that little black Judi Hill stayed in the right path and on the right path.
Okay.
Mine were my high school English teachers. They are the reason that I am who I am today.
Mine is Mrs. Neal, Mrs. Celeste Neal, my first grade teacher.
Wow.
Used to think she was so mean because we went to the same church. So inevitably, Sunday morning, she'd come over and talk to Ellen, so-and-so, Lathardus, how you doing, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And I'm like, ooh, but she cared.
That's right.
And it really wasn't until I walking around the University of Akron, but I saw some of the impact of how people what would happen because of their experiences. I realized this is what high expectations she had. She cared enough to push and did so in love. And I'm still learning lessons. When I think of myself as an educator or how to engage or what does good education look like, I'm still reflecting on those days of being in the first grade and how Mrs. Neal did what she did.
Wow. Well, Carter G. Woodson, I have to share this quote. He said, real education means to inspire people to live more abundantly. And I think that's what all of us are talking about here today. So thank you, Dr. Collins, for joining us. Thank you, audience, for joining us for this vital conversation on education. Education is not just the key to opportunity, it's the foundation of empowerment, equity, and justice. Every child deserves access to a quality education that nurtures their potential and prepares them for a brighter future. I'm Judi Hill, President, Akron NAACP.
And I'm Dr. Lathardus Goggins II, Vice President and Education Chair for the Akron NAACP. As we advocate for stronger schools and greater support for our students and educators, remember that an informed and educated community is an unstoppable force. Let us keep learning, let us keep pushing, let us keep building a better tomorrow together.
Thank you.
Well, you can catch this and other episodes of Power in Community Podcast on YouTube and wherever you get all your favorite podcasts. My name is Kat McDaniel. Thank you again for joining, and see you next time.